On this week's Political Figure episode, we've got a senator who's like that food that sounded so good on the menu, but when you finally got it, it ended up being so bad the dog didn't even want to eat it. Senator Krysten Sinema Toast Crunch. Krysten Leah Sinema was born July 12, 1976 in Tucson, Arizona. Her parents divorced when she was young, and her mom remarried and moved her to Defuniak Springs, Florida. Her stepfather would end up losing his job, their house would be foreclosed upon, and according to her, they moved into an abandoned gas station where they didn't have running water or electricity. However, according to court documents filed by her mom and stepdad, there was receipts showing that the utilities had always been paid. When asked about this discrepancy, Krysten responded with something along the lines of, "I know my truth." But hey, the memory is a fickle thing. She graduated high school in 1993 at the age of 16 and got her bachelor's in 1995 at the age of 18 from Brigham Young University. So she was clearly very smart, which would also explain why, despite being raised Mormon and attending Brigham Young, she left the LDS Church upon graduation. She then moved back to Arizona and worked as a social worker while studying to get her master's in social work from Arizona State in 1999. She then got her Juris Doctor from Arizona State College of Law in 2004 and became a criminal defense attorney. In 2012, she decided to get her PhD in Justice Studies from Arizona State, and in 2018, she got an MBA in business for funsies. I told you she was smart. In 2000, she worked on Ralph Nader's presidential campaign, which goes to show that being smart doesn't mean you always make good choices. Through the early 2000s, she ran for a number of local elected positions as an independent, unsuccessfully. She wrote articles about the damages of capitalism, condemned Joe Lieberman's bid for the Democratic nomination for president, participated in activism and protests against the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and even wrote an opinion piece arguing that Ronald Reagan and Daddy Bush were the real Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden lovers, which isn't really an opinion, that's more a statement of fact. In 2004, she joined the Democratic Party because I guess she was tired of losing elections as an independent, and was finally able to win an election for the Arizona State House of Representatives 15th District. She continued serving there until 2010 when she was elected to the Arizona State Senate. During her time in the Arizona State Legislature, she worked aggressively on LGBTQ rights, coming out as a openly bisexual woman. She worked on some science and technology policy, on healthcare, and was even appointed by Barack Obama as a member of a committee to help shape the ACA. In 2006, she even bragged that she was the most liberal member of the Arizona State Legislature. In 2012, she ran for the U.S. House of Representatives and won, becoming the first openly bisexual woman elected to Congress. But this is the point that the waiter set our plate on the table, and we began to have our doubts about our order. She fought pretty hard for the DREAM Act, which protected undocumented immigrants who came to the United States as children from being deported and helped give them a path to citizenship. But it seemed like the chef had maybe left the socialism out of the refrigerator a little too long, and it had started to spoil. Because she started fighting pretty hard against banking regulation, which wasn't really the best pairing with the Great Recession appetizer we just finished. Now, you may think it seems strange that all of a sudden Ralph Nader supporting, capitalism criticizing Krysten suddenly was all in favor of rolling back banking regulations. But the fermentation and the flavor profile gets a little clearer when in 2017 she accepted over $100,000 in campaign contributions from the banking industry. And it just goes to show that when people say you get more conservative as you get older, what they're really saying is that my convictions and integrity have a price. And I sold them a long time ago. She did go on to win her Senate campaign, being the first female senator to represent Arizona and turning the long-held Senate seat blue for the first time since 1995. Now we're a few bites into the meal and we are quickly realizing that while we've eaten worse things, this dinner experience is certainly not a pleasant one. Now, there's certainly been a few bites that haven't been completely appalling. She voted to convict Donald Trump both times on his impeachment. She supported the J6 Commission to investigate the insurrection. She's continued to support LGBTQ rights. She supports abortion rights and condemned the overturning of Roe. She's long argued against capital punishment, and she voted against repealing the Affordable Care Act. But it seems like when it comes to any policy where there might be some personal financial gain to be had, corporate crossover Krysten has lost her convictions. She voted to make the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy permanent. She voted to repeal the estate tax on all estates over $11 million. She voted against a $15 minimum wage. The former anti-war activist has found a new love for defense spending and has evolved her position on military intervention in foreign countries. She voted against the Green New Deal. However, she had no problem with the Inflation Reduction Act's drought relief provision, which I'm sure has nothing to do with her being from a crispy western state. She voted against prescription pricing reform, which I'm sure had absolutely nothing to do with the hundreds of thousands of dollars she's received in support from the pharmaceutical lobby. Her stance on immigration seems to have hardened considerably, saying she still supports a path to citizenship for current undocumented immigrants. She just wants to make that path as difficult as possible by forcing them to pay back taxes, fines, making them learn learn English. You know, all things that'll certainly make impoverished immigrants in fear of being deported work towards citizenship. She voted against abolishing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. She voted to expand maximum prison sentences for undocumented immigrants who re-enter the country. About the only not shitty immigration stance she seems to have these days is she doesn't support mass deportations. She voted in favor of barring the FCC's ability to regulate broadband speeds, which would allow major companies to monopolize the internet and shut out smaller web services. She voted against limiting the NSA's ability to collect our electronic communications and information without a warrant. And most notably, her and Dino Joe were the two deciding votes to preserve the gridlocking policy of the Senate filibuster, which immediately resulted in the failure to pass voting rights legislation. In her 2022 Senate re-election campaign, she continued to use the Democratic Party's software, fundraising resources, and support. And then when she won, she immediately switched her party to independent. She continues to caucus with the Democratic Party in a similar way to Bernie Sanders, but also not in a similar way, because she clearly has no spine or convictions. And sellout Sinema has made it very clear that her only allegiance is to herself and her donors. So I say good riddance, don't let the door hit you. In Arizona, I sincerely hope that you have some more quality options than corruption Krysten in the next election.